The clubroom scene from High School DxD is probably the most hated thing in that series. All the fans collectively came together to hate on this scene, and from what I've seen, it's widely considered one of the worst moments in the series. And I was one of these people saying this. I went into this video thinking I was going to have to write a detailed analysis about how bad the scene was and why it just doesn't work, but the more I wrote and the more detail I went into, I realized something. I had a revelation. But I wanted to make sure I had all my details right before coming to a conclusion about this scene. So I rewatched the entire series again, which is kind of why this video took so long to make, so sorry about that. But after my rewatch, I have come to a definite conclusion that the clubroom scene isn't that bad. And I would go as far to say that this is one of the better moments in High School DxD. But before I get into the video, I have to give a shout out to GG or Gigi. It's gotta be one of those. But I asked my subscribers what video they would want to see for a 2K special, and this was the video that won in the polls by a surprisingly big margin. So of course I had to make it. So thank you, GG. Let's just get back into it. For those who don't know what the clubroom scene is, or maybe you forgot what scene I'm talking about, because there's like a million scenes in the clubroom, all you need to know is that leading up to this scene, Issei, the main character of High School DxD, never really refers to Rias by her name. He always calls her President. And Rias has a big problem with that because she feels like they're close enough for him to not have to be so formal with her, and it makes her feel like she isn't that important to him. That's what you need to know going into the clubroom scene, but the actual scene is just a very awkward moment between Issei and Rias, where Rias gets fed up with Issei's obliviousness and finally just asks him what she means to him on a deeper level. And in response to this question, the first thing that Issei says is that she's the president of the club they're in. That's the first thing he thought of, was to call her president again. Of course, this makes Rias really upset and she leaves the room crying, and the other people in the room proceed to attack Issei because of his oblivious answer to Rias' question, and Issei is forced to do some self-reflecting on his own, and that's the rundown of the scene. And the rundown doesn't really do the scene justice because it makes it seem a lot more childish than it actually is. The clubroom scene is not a bad scene. It's one of the best, and it's executed surprisingly well. And the reason for that is because this scene is High School DxD. It's what everything has secretly been building up to. This is the ultimate climax. This scene is such an interesting one because it's clear that it's supposed to make the viewer mad. It's a really awkward moment. Issei completely fumbles with his answer. Everyone just dogpiles on him. Nobody leaves that scene looking good. And let's not forget, the scene directly before this one was probably the biggest blue balls moment in the entire series. So things were already really awkward between Issei and Rias before this moment. So to me at least, it's pretty clear that you're not supposed to like this moment. This moment forces Issei into a very uncomfortable conversation that also acts as a moment of realization for him. And it's also very necessary for his progression as a character. Throughout the series, we're constantly questioning what's wrong with Issei. Why won't he make a move on these girls? How is he this oblivious? These are the questions we have in our head while watching this series. And the answers all point back to one character, Rainier. Now luckily I've already made a video about the psychological impact Rainier had on Issei, so that video is kind of necessary for this one to make sense. But in that video I mainly went over the overarching effect Rainier had on Issei. I kind of talked about the beginning and the end, but I want to get more into the middle part here, where we get to really see the effects of Rainier, and how that eventually leads up to the clubroom scene. After Issei beats Rainier and is scarred for life, he's forced to live a new life. A life where he can actually mean something. A life where he has the power to change fate. And at first it's going really well. He's able to save Rias from Riser, and from there things really start to take off. I mean, he even secured the kiss with the girl that he loves most. It doesn't get much better than that. Season 1 ends off in a way that makes it seem like Issei and Rias are guaranteed to be in a relationship in the next season. But that doesn't happen. This is especially strange because they sleep in the same bed together, but they aren't a couple. They're just cuddle buddies. But as season 2 goes on, Issei is kind of distanced from Rias. It's not intentional, but he definitely spends a lot less time with her than you would expect. He's just really busy in this season. The entire first half is mostly mostly about him helping Kiba get through his problems with Excalibur in the church. And part of that included him having to go behind the back of Rias. So just overall, they were way more distant from each other than they were in the previous season. On top of that distance between those two, a big thing happens. Akeno begins to have feelings for Issei. And it's more of a crush for now than it is like pure love. But it's still a problem because she's so forward with him. And this love that Akeno builds for Issei is what plants the second seed for the Clubroom scene. Like I said earlier, the Clubroom scene gets a lot of buildup, but it's not just Issei whose story leads up to this scene. It's also Rias. While Issei is dealing with himself, Rias also begins to have issues. Issues that she already had, but they were brought forward a lot more by Akeno's relationship with Issei. As season 2 goes on, Akeno becomes more and more forward with Issei, and Rias notices this. And for the first time ever, she feels jealousy. Now, the jealousy isn't anything big. It's not the main part of Rias' story, but again, it is the catalyst. The more moves Akeno makes on Issei, the more times Rias catches them doing things that would make any girl jealous. This continues to build up, and eventually it leads to what I would say is not only one of the biggest indicators of Issei's trauma, but also your first hint to the eventual Clubroom scene. So Rias catches Issei being a little too friendly with Akeno, and that leads to her getting upset and in her own head. She then asks him a question.
Your goal is to have a harem one day, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about Akeno? Would she have a place in your harem? Would I?
You're my master.
Of course. There's no room for me. I'm your master.
I showed the dub because I think it does a better job at capturing the essence of this scene. But in both, he essentially only refers to Rias as his master and not anything deeper. And this hits Rias really hard. If I really am the favorite, then why do I feel the furthest away from him? That's what Rias says after she hears Issei's response. And it's a great line. And it's made even better when you think about how little we've seen these two together in this season. In her mind, up to this point, he doesn't call her by her name. He doesn't tell her he's in love with her, and he just said that she's just his master and nothing else. Obviously, he's not doing this on purpose, but she doesn't know that. And it's already established in season 1 that Rias has two big problems. One of them is that she doesn't like being known as a title. Everyone in the underworld only knows her by her last name. Nobody cares about Rias, they only care about Grimory. She literally explains this to Issei in season 1, and then he goes on to refer to her as a title. Again, not intentionally, but he does it. So Issei has already accidentally did one of the things that she hates the most. To her, she feels like she's being left behind because of how Issei acts around Akeno. Combine that with the fact that he actually said her name in the scene before that, it was bound to cause problems. And this moment sticks with Rias and doesn't ever go away. This is a reoccurring thing in the series. Rias feeling like Issei doesn't like her. I know it kind of seems silly when you think about all the stuff he does for her, but that's where we get to the next thing they established in season 1. In season 1, it's established that Rias struggles with her image and her confidence. Because she's always had crazy expectations stuck on her, she feels like she has the weight of the world on her shoulders. And this is why she wants to establish her name for herself, to live up to these expectations and to make her family proud while also making a name for herself. She wants to be her own individual while also still making her family proud, but of course that comes with high expectations. As we see with them trying to ship Riser with her. They try to force her to get with Riser because Riser is high class, and it's just expected from her, who's also high class, to be with another high class individual. So she has this underlying insecurity that she'll just never be enough. And it's shown in the light novel during the trial she has with Issei in volume 8. Rias starts doubting herself and comparing herself to her brother since she's way weaker than him. She doubts that she can be the next heir to the Grimory family. And she also again doubts that she can live up to these expectations. Her brother is the ultimate ruler of the underworld, and she feels like she's nothing compared to that, especially strength-wise. We see this thought process in the anime too. When the group can't get Gasper out of his room, room, Rias begins to feel like a failure because she wasn't strong enough to control his power, and also because instead of helping him through his trauma, she just spoiled him and coddled him up and gave him everything he wanted. But ultimately that didn't help him with anything, it just made him even more secluded. She wasn't strong enough physically or mentally to help him, and she feels regret because of that. And of course that affects her confidence too. And of course season 3 is just filled with moments of Rias zoning out and staring straight ahead and trying to figure out why she feels this way. Why is she feeling so insecure in herself? There are a whole bunch of moments in season 3 where we see her doing this and she's always questioning herself when she does it. It shows that she's lacking in confidence and she doesn't necessarily even know why. I think those are some good moments where we finally get to understand Rias on a deeper level. She's insecure in herself. She lacks confidence. And this is her character arc for the first part of High School DxD. She's fighting herself, trying to overcome her insecurity. She's going through a big internal battle with herself, and she's doing it at the same time as Issei. They're both dealing with themselves mentally. Obviously, you all should know about the Issei trauma. Most of y'all seem to have a grasp on it. But they're not just doing Issei's trauma, they're doing Rias' insecurity at the same time. One of the best moments that shows this is the conversation they have at the end of season 2. It gives us two perspectives of characters going through different things. Rias asks Issei if she's glad that she met him. Again, furthering the story of Rias' insecurity because anyone can tell that he loves her. And at first, Issei jumps out and says of course, but then he has a moment of hesitation after he says that. And he hesitates because he thinks Rias is going to end up with someone else, and it makes him upset. Rias notices this small mental error and kind of questions it, because to her it sounds like he's not sure. If someone tells you, yeah, I like you, but you assume the thing after the but is going to be something negative. This scene eventually leads to a kiss that again becomes a dead end. The kiss leads to nothing. These two things, Rias' insecurity and Issei's trauma, they both bounce off of each other. They lead to Issei and Rias' relationship to take steps back. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back with them. Their relationship is constantly going up and down because of moments like these, on top of Issei calling her president at every moment. Season 3 is a really weird part of their relationship because it's out of order, and the last 3 episodes kind of ruin everything. So I'm just going to ignore the last 3 episodes for now and just talk about what we're given that somewhat follows a light novel. Season 3 is filled with moments that build tension between these two. Issei is especially protective of Asya in this season because of Diodora's presence. Diodora reminds Issei of Rainier, and it gives him flashbacks to those times with Rainier, which is a reoccurring theme of this season, trauma. This season gives us some of the most instances of Issei's trauma. The dream sequence is a perfect start to the season, and it reminds us, or lets us know that the trauma is still building. The closer the other girls get, and the more girls that form around him, the more his trauma becomes apparent. I think this dream sequence shows us Issei's thought process. When the girls make advances towards him, he's down with it until he thinks of Rainier, and that causes him to hesitate, because when he was down to get with Rainier, she killed him, and obviously he doesn't want that to happen again. It's a good scene with big implications for the future. Another moment is when Issei randomly hugs Asya in that same episode. Issei is starting to act strange in this season, and we as an audience don't understand why. Why does he keep thinking of Rainier? I love how they hide it behind Diodora and make it seem like he's the reason, and then it's revealed later what the actual problem was. They put this focus on Issei, and then they develop this story with Rias in the background. Rias' reaction to this moment with Issei and Asya shows us that she still feels insecure in herself and in her relationship with Issei. All Issei did was hug Asya. Even something as small as that begins to bother her. Season 3 continues and the tension between these two increase. I can go over every single moment, but we would be here for like an hour. The last one I want to talk about from this season is when they go to Rias' home in the underworld. While the team is in the underworld, Rias' parents essentially tell Issei that Rias likes him. They don't even try to hide it. I mean, look at Rias' reaction. All that and no reaction from Issei. He acts like he didn't hear them. He ignores it, and he plays it off as her parents being wacky. And this is basically how it always goes. No matter how obvious the sign, Issei just won't believe it's true. All because he believed it was true before, and he got killed for that. I mentioned this in the Rainier video, but Rainier didn't just make Issei scared of girls, she also destroyed his confidence. Because of her constant mocking and her heartless killing of Asya and himself, Issei has no confidence. It's brought up in the same episode where we find out about Rias' insecurities. Both characters have confidence issues that are preventing them from moving forward in their relationship. These two are in an endless cycle. Rias and Issei have a cute moment together that leads to nothing. This makes Rias more insecure because she feels like something should have happened by now. So she gives him the most obvious sign ever, but he doesn't believe it's true because he's scared of being hurt like that again, and because he feels like he isn't enough. And obviously this just leaves Rias to question her relationship with Issei more and more, and the tensions just continue to build. Over season 3 and season 4, it's that same cycle continuing to happen, until this moment.
You're amazing, President.
President?
President? Are you okay?
Enough, Issei!
This is what I would say is the most annoying scene in the anime. Rias is fed up with Issei's obliviousness and lack of action, and she decides to make the move on him. They're about to full-on bang. Issei's excited, Rias is excited, the fans are excited, everyone's been waiting for this moment, until he calls her by that name again. President. He's been calling her president for the entire series. But it especially bothers Rias here because this is their first real intimate moment where they're about to do the deed. It's a special moment for both of them, and he refers to her as a title. And she says this out loud. She questions why he would call her that in a moment like this. And then Issei says it again and again. He calls her president not once, but twice. This completely ruins the mood and makes Rias run away angrily. Tensions are at their highest here. Issei just had the biggest fumble of all time, and he doesn't even understand what he did wrong. Later on in the same episode, we finally get to the scene that everything built up to. We're finally at the clubroom scene.
Issei, I need to know. Will you protect me?
Yeah, of course. I'd die for you, President.
What about Asya?
Huh? Yeah, I'd protect her too.
And Akano?
Totally. Why wouldn't I?
What am I to you? How do you see me? Just answer me already.
Okay, let me think. Well, you're the president.
You're an ass! Rias, wait! I can't believe you, Issei.
Even by your standards, that was way oblivious. Huh? I don't get it.
There's a lot to digest with this scene. First of all, the dub completely butchered this scene. For the first 3 seasons, Issei had no problem calling Rias by her name, and all of a sudden in the 4th season, he only calls her president. So it seems like it's a lot more out of nowhere in the dub, but in the sub, he does call her president for the majority of the time. But ignoring that, this scene is what all that buildup I just talked about, this is what it led to. A big clash between Rias and Issei, where on one hand, you have one person battling their trauma that makes him scared of commitment with girls, trauma that makes it hard to see him with a girl romantically, trauma that doesn't even allow him to express his feelings for these girls out loud. He can only do it in his head. And then on the other hand, you have a person with confidence issues and insecurities. These insecurities and confidence issues make her question her relationship with Issei, and they make her think that he might not like her. It's a complete clash between these two perspectives, and these two things combined is what led up to it, and I don't hate it. I really don't hate this scene. The thing that surprised me the most about the reaction to this moment is that people are mad at Rias and the other people for this scene, but not Issei. I mean, ultimately, in these people's perspective, at this point in the scene, they do not know that Issei is going through things. And the group just watched Issei give one of the worst answers that makes him sound like he doesn't care about Rias' feelings at all. So why are we surprised that they're mad at that? Anyone would be mad in this situation. Their reactions are perfectly justified, but obviously so is Issei's answer. I like this scene because nobody is in the wrong here. Both sides have a point. They both are going through their own things, and I like that the most about this scene. You realize that no one's really in the wrong here. Rias has hit her melting point with Issei. No matter what she tries, he won't take a hint. No matter how many moments they share, he acts like they didn't mean anything. And no matter how many times she tells him, he won't stop calling calling her president. I think this would drive anyone crazy. And it's supposed to drive us, the viewers, crazy. We just watched Issei get yelled at for calling her president, and then he does it again. It's infuriating. Everyone in the room, including us, is left wondering why he would say that. Is he really that oblivious? And I would say justifiably so. Everyone in the group attacks him. They all take a dig at him, even Gasper, someone who looks up to him religiously. All of them let him know how dumb that was to call her president again after she asked him what she meant to him on a deeper level. And it finally hits Issei that he's doing something wrong. Everyone attacking him, on top of him making Rias cry, forces him to do some self-evaluation. But no matter how much he thinks about it, he still doesn't truly understand how important he is to Rias. While he's talking to himself, he keeps coming to the same conclusion that Rias likes him. But to him, that's just impossible, so he keeps doubting it. He doesn't feel like he's good enough for her, and he sees her as perfect. There's a really interesting moment in season 2 where Rias gets embarrassed by her parents, and Issei's first reaction is shock. He's shocked that Rias can feel embarrassment because, again, he sees her as perfect. She can do no wrong in his eyes. He puts Rias on such a high pedestal, while at the same time, his confidence is so low that it's just impossible for him to see them getting together. This little moment of self-reflection does a great job at showing us how much he loves Rias and how much he wants to be with her, but he just can't act on it. It would be too good to be true. And while he's in the middle of his internal dialogue, he gets interrupted and we get one of the best scenes in the entire series. Akano, Asuya, and Kaneko all come in to talk to Issei and to heal him. They aren't just healing his lifespan that he lost after going Juggernaut Drive, they're here to heal him on a deeper level. They come to heal the scar that was left by Rainier. These three were all able to recognize that something was up with Issei, and they were also able to figure out that he's still suffering from the effects of Rainier. All three of them also had to deal with their own trauma, so maybe that made it easier for them to see that Issei also was dealing with something. To truly understand how good and how impactful this scene is, you just have to watch it for yourself. It's a masterclass of relationship building. The girls essentially just let him know that he's loved. It's a fantastic moment. Issei needed to hear those words so that he could fix his heart. Asuya does an amazing job at picking Issei up while he's at a low point. She reassures him and lets him know that everyone in the group loves him, and they actually love him, not just lust for him. They have true, genuine love for each other. This scene is able to work so well because Issei's relationships with these characters has been built throughout the series. All these characters were lifted up when they were at their lowest by Issei. He helped all of them through their trauma, and now they're here to repay the favor. The bond they have is so tight-knit, it truly is one of the best things about the series. My favorite thing Asuya says to Issei is, "I wish you could see the wonderful things we see when we look at you. You'll just have to trust us." It's such a beautiful line. Even if Issei thinks that no one is there for him, even if he thinks that these girls actually don't love him, even if he thinks he's not good enough to love these girls, Asuya lets him know that it's the complete opposite. It's such a beautiful moment that's made even better when you realize that this is really the only time where we see a girl lift Issei up. He's there for them, but this is the only time in the series where they are there for him. This moment completely changes Issei's character from here on out. He learns that other people believe in him, but more importantly, he learns to believe in himself. It makes him stronger, and he's finally able to overcome his internal struggles. We see this in the Cyro-Org fight. Issei's down after taking a nasty hit from Cyro-Org, and that lack of confidence starts to sneak in. It starts to creep into his mind that he isn't enough to beat Cyro-Org, and he's about to go Juggernaut Drive again, which will likely kill him. But then he's reminded of how many people believe in him. It's not just Asuya, Akano, and Kaneko. It's all those kids that look up to him. It's Irina, it's Zenobia, it's Kiba, it's Gasper, it's Roswaisa, it's Azazel, it's Ravel, and most importantly, it's Rias. All these people look up to him and believe in him, and they all have confidence in him. And he sees that in this scene. And so he gets up, overcomes his Juggernaut curse, confesses to Rias, and then unlocks a new form that he uses to beat Cyro-Org. This whole scene just shows us that he was the only person stopping himself from reaching his potential. And in the end, he was able to not just overcome his lack of confidence, but he was also able to overcome his trauma. He finally confesses to Rias later on in that episode. Like one-on-one confesses, doesn't just scream it out, one-on-one, face-to-face, in the club room. He lets her know how he feels about her, showing that he has finally overcome his Rainier trauma, ending possibly the most important story being told throughout the series, the love story between the two. None of this would have been possible without that clubroom scene. So how can I say it's a bad scene? Well, I can't. It had the buildup. The scene itself was realistically uncomfortable, and the outcome showed how impactful it was and how important it was. There's just no way for me to call this a bad scene. I do think there are parts of it that are bad. I think the fact that so many people got mad at Rias for this scene shows me that they didn't do a good enough job at making Rias' story feel perfect enough. They could have done a better job at giving her side of the story. I also think that sometimes they hyperfixate on the president part too much. They make it seem like she's only mad because he's calling her president, when in reality, it's not just because the name, it's because of her confidence and her insecurity. Also, the English dub kind of messes up the entire scene, because in seasons 1 through 3, he's calling her Rias like he has no problem with it in the dub. But then in season 4, all of a sudden he can't call her Rias and he only calls her president. But in the sub, he calls her president pretty much the whole way through. I think maybe they could have added a scene where Issei explains to Rias what's been going on with him, because she doesn't really know. And of course, I think the biggest problem with this scene is season 3. Season 3 single-handedly makes this scene look so dumb, but I'll make a video on that some other time. But other than that, I can't really say I hated the clubroom scene. It's filled with a lot of drama, and it's a lot better when you look at it as a whole rather than just that scene. Going into this, I didn't expect to have anything good to say about it, but now I can confidently say that the clubroom scene is not a bad scene. It's built up throughout the series, and the impact of it is felt deeply. Without this scene, we wouldn't have gotten the incredible reveal of Issei being haunted by Rainier. Without this scene, Issei would have never come to terms with himself. Without this scene, Issei never would have accomplished the one thing he wanted most in life, a deeper relationship with Rias. More than anything, he wants to be able to protect and take care of Rias and make sure that she stays happy. That's what he wants most in life. And because of the clubroom scene, he's able to do that now. The clubroom scene is not a bad scene. In fact, it might just be the most important scene in High School DxD. And that video is finally over. Sorry that took so long. Like I said before, I rewatched the entire series again. 1, because I never ended up finishing my first rewatch. And 2, I wasn't really paying attention to every little detail. So I rewatched it, I wrote some stuff down, I ranked every episode, and I wrote mini reviews of every episode. So I basically already have an episode's ranked video. I would just have to record and edit it. So that'll probably be next, but that would probably be a long video, so maybe there might be something in between. I'm pretty heartbroken right now from what happened at the Royal Rumble. No! I can't even believe it. Almost started crying. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.